because now we're being recorded and your best donors are your current donors. So if you think about it in the sense that you're working really hard to bring in donors to your organization, you want to make sure that you are keeping those donors with your organization. And it is harder to do than you might actually think. So I'm going to ask you to type in the chat if you know how many donors you keep from year to year. This is also called your retention rate. So yes or no, you know what your retention rate is, you don't know what your retention rate is. A little informal survey. All right, we're about 50-50 right now, yes and no. No. Now we're, okay. All right, so some of you are getting there, some of you don't have it yet, some of you do have it. So if you do know what your retention rate is and you're willing to share, type the number in the chat because I'm curious to see. You know, we've got about 65%. That's pretty darn good. 58%. Yep. Thanks, Maddie, for sharing. Anyone else? Okay. So this is the core of why we're talking about this today. And okay. How many donors do you keep each year? So in the sector, kind of generally speaking across the board, our retention rate is abysmal. And it may be slightly different for your organization. It may be better, it may be worse. But when you're talking about the average donor retention rate of existing donors, you're talking somewhere between 40 and 50%, kind of across the sector, across the country. Now, if you think for a moment about what that actually means, it means half to more than half of your donors leave you every year. If you're talking about new donors, like that donor who just gave to you for the first time, the chances that they're going to give to you again, it's only 20 to 30%, which means that that new donor who just gave to you, there's 70 to 80% chance they don't give to you again. So what this means is that you are spending a lot of time bringing in new donors to your organization, but it's just keeping up maybe with churn, right? You're just replacing the donors who are actually leaving you. And all of that effort to attract all these new donors kind of goes out the window if you don't keep them. So let's talk a little bit about why donors stay and why donors leave. So how do you keep your donors, right? There are three key ways. One is you thank them, right? It sounds really simple, but it's not exactly easy. So you need to thank them quickly, you need to thank them genuinely, and you need to thank them repeatedly throughout the year. This is not a rote tax receipt letter. This is a thank you that makes them feel really appreciated. Then you need to engage them, right? Whatever your work is, there are ways to keep your donors in the loop. You want to bring them in as part of your solution, use their expertise. You want to invite them to things. You want to give them insider information. You want to share successes. You want to share when you hit the media in good ways. You want them to kind of know what's going on, and that increases their buy-in. But the key way that you keep your donors, and this is the way that smaller nonprofits really tend to fall down, is you need to show them what their impact is. So donors give to you because there's impact they want in the world, right? Impact they want in their communities, impact they want in the world, in the environment, kind of whatever it is you do, they're giving to you because they want to see change. So they are investing in you and your organization so that they can have impact with you. So before you ask them for money again, you actually need to show them that they had the impact that they wanted to have with you. Now, when we're talking about thanking, showing impact, and engaging, this can be personalized. Some of it can be automated. It really depends on the size gift that a donor gives. But you want to keep in mind that you want to treat all your donors really well, right? Your major donors, obviously, they're giving you significantly, but your mid-level donors, they're your pipeline into your major donor pool. So you want to make sure they feel like they're being treated really well. And your small dollar donors, well, they have the potential to be your major donors, 10 years from now. You want to keep all of them, or as many of them as possible. The thing you don't want to happen is you don't want to have people running for the doors because you haven't taken good care of them. Now, you only have the capacity to personalize contact throughout the year with a small portion of your top donors. Just don't forget your smaller donors along the way as you automate some of these thank yous and impact reporting. So we're not going to be talking about how you engage your donors today. We're going to be talking about how you thank them and how you show impact. So we're going to put ourselves in our donor shoes. So I'm going to assume that everyone here gives to a charity because this is the nonprofit sector. We all understand the importance of philanthropy. But I want you to type in the chat, what is the one thing you want to hear from a charity that you give to? What is the thing that makes you stay? Meaningful thank you from Audrey. Ava says new initiatives. Right. Dana says making a difference with my gift. Yeah. Christine agrees. Heart. I like that, Heather. Impact. I'm making a difference, right? Knowing, yep. Right. Here are the themes. You want to know that you have impact. Right. The amount's given to work, right? All right. So I'm going to have you type in the chat again. What would make you not give to a charity again? What is something that a charity would do that you would say, geez, I don't think they're going to be a priority from next year. Maybe this isn't the charity for me. What is it that they would do? More talk than action, right? So you would have to know what their action is. Didn't use my money, right? They didn't steward your gift well. You never heard anything after making a gift. No communication. They ask too often. They don't thank me. Yeah, or there's an error. Oh, I like that, Nancy. There's an error in the thank you. A great lag between the thank you accompanied by the new ask. Yeah. Generic robot replies. Exactly. Okay. So the great thing about fundraising, it's a super data-rich field, right? The data helps bring parameters with a lot of room for creativity and flexibility in there. But the great thing is there's actually research on this, right? Why donors leave. So if you take a look at the research, 54% say they could no longer afford it, right? And this is something we all understand, right? We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We all get that some of our donors have not fared as well as others in this very hard year and a half. But this also means that maybe they're giving to few organizations. It doesn't mean they're not giving altogether, but maybe you didn't make the cut, right? 36% said others more deserving. What that boils down to is that your donor didn't understand the impact that you have and chose to have that impact somewhere else, right? They gave to you because they thought they were going to have an impact, but that other organization actually, communicating with them that they're doing the thing and that they've had impact may look more deserving if they're not hearing from you that you're having impact. So poor service communication, right? This is along the lines of what you all are saying, right? If you're not communicating those thank yous, if you're not engaging them, if you're not showing them that they've had impact, yeah, that's poor service and communication. 16% have passed. Now, this is very real for all of us. My first year as an executive director, I lost 5 major donors in pretty quick succession. It amounted to a staff position. And all because 4 of them passed and 1 left in my service area. And it was pretty crushing. So I don't want to gloss over the fact that our donors pass, and that has real impact on us. But 13% say they never got thanked for donating. Now, there are cases where organizations don't send a thank you. And I know this is true because, I have friends who are fundraisers who monitor what happens after their gift goes in. They monitor what they get back. And they share stories with me about the organization they gave to who never sent thank you. But more likely than that, because I think most nonprofits, kind of can hit that basic bar. More likely is that they got a thank you that wasn't really a thank you, right? It was a rote tax receipt letter that, talked about the organization and not about the donor. It was, something in legalese or in jargon that the donor actually couldn't tell that they were being thanked, or they only got one and they forgot about it, right? Because, I get one of something, and that doesn't mean I remember that it happened. 9% also have no memory of supporting, right? You didn't, as an organization, you didn't stay on somebody's radar. You didn't thank them enough. You didn't show that impact. You didn't keep them in the fold. 8%, no info on how monies we use, right? We're coming back to impact. 5% thought the charity didn't need them. Again, it's because if you didn't make a case and show the impact of the giving, yeah, your donor's going to say, they seem to be chugging along just fine without me. They don't need my money. So there's also great research on why donors stay, right? They perceive the organization to be effective, right? Because they've been told what the impact that they have is. They know what to expect with each interaction because they get thanked after they make a gift, and they know that they're going to get impact reports, right? They receive a timely thank you. Just as you all were saying, like getting that thank you in a really timely manner matters. They receive opportunities to make their views known. Now, this falls squarely kind of in the engagement and cultivation realm. It is a great way to cultivate your donors, is giving them opportunities to have some say through surveys, when you talk to them in person. It's a really fantastic way to have your donors have more buy-in with what you do. You also need to follow through on what they ask. So if you're asking them how they want to be communicated with, and they get to make their views known about what their preferences are, then you actually need to follow through on their preferences, right? They feel like they're part of an important cause, right? Because they know that you're important, because they know you have impact, because you've told them. They feel that their involvement is appreciated because they're thanked really well. They receive info on who's being helped, right? Because they know what the impact is. So it really does boil down to, are your donors thanked well? Do they know what your impact is? Okay. So here's my next question for you all. If I were to give to your organization today, how many times would you thank me over the course of a year before you ask me again? So let's say you only ask me once a year. How many times would I be thanked? So take a minute, think about your process, type your number into the chat. All right, at least twice. Stephanie says, Ava says 3 times. All right, David says 4. Okay. Once, unless a gift is over 500, then 3 more times from Audrey. No, Amy says 1 for each gift. Okay. So in thanking your donors, I'm gonna kind of talk about this in 2 categories. One for your brand new first-time donors, and one for your existing donors who have given to you more than once, who are kind of in the fold, right? When you have those brand new donors, you always want to treat them like VIPs, right? Roll out the red carpet, no matter what their giving level is, because you've just seen the numbers, right? If you're likely to lose 80% of the people who give to you for the first time, then making some effort on your end to make sure that they are thanked and thanked well, and they remember that they gave the gift and they feel really appreciated, can really help increase that retention rate. So existing donors, they'll get a lot of things too, but at kind of varying levels of personalization based on how much they give. So let's talk for a moment about that first thank you, right? That first thank you, in an ideal, perfect world, the data's really clear on this, should happen in 48 hours. Now, if you're thinking about, if I gave to you as an organization today, when could I expect to receive my first thank you? I would be surprised if any of you said 48 hours, just because this is the most logistically challenging thing I'm going to ask you to do. But the data is super clear. At 48 hours, there's kind of a drop off. And if you can capture a thank you in those first 48 hours, you can increase your retention rate by more than 30%. So that's a big deal when retention rates are so low. And you can think of this as pure thank you, right? I'm not saying that you need to get your tax receipt out in the first 48 hours. We're going to go through some options for thanking folks in a minute. But however it is, you need to figure out that first 48 hours. If you can do it, it will make such a big difference. Now, I know a lot of small nonprofits, you have a bookkeeper who comes in once, maybe twice a week, like you're not even processing gifts in 48 hours. So thinking about systems that allow you to get flagged when gifts come in would be the only way to figure out how you get that thank you out in the first 48 hours. And if you have a large donor pool, you're going to start segmenting these by new first-time donors and donors over a certain giving level, right? Because at some point, trying to get something out in 48 hours is going to become really challenging. But absolutely for those first-time donors and for donors who are kind of your top givers, however you want to define that, 48 hours, it will make a big difference. So let's take a step back. In those first 3 months, you really want to be thanking your donors 3 times. Now, this includes that first thank you in the first 48 hours. So if you're thinking, okay, I've gotten a thank you on the first 48 hours, probably wasn't the tax receipt because figuring out how to get that lined up and getting that in the mail isn't going to get to them in 48 hours. Your second thank you is the tax receipt, right? Which hopefully is framed as a thank you and not a this is what our organization does type letter. And then there's room to think about what that third thank you could be. You can get really creative with it. But this is how you don't fall off the radar screen. This is how your donors don't turn around and say, oh, I never got thanked, right? Because you're thanking them repeatedly. You're making sure that they feel really good about their engagement with your organization. You're staying on the radar screen so they remember that they gave. Let's take another step back. So you have probably heard these. The mystical, magical they in the world say that it takes at least 7 times to hear something before you actually remember it and absorb it. So if we apply that to thank yous, that means a standard really is 7 thank yous throughout the year. So enough time so that you stay on the radar screen, they're thanked repeatedly throughout the year, genuinely feel appreciated. It really sinks in that they are a member of your community and that you appreciate that they're there. All right, the great thing about thank yous is you can get really creative about how to thank your donors. So I'm gonna go through some ideas. This is not an all-inclusive list. And if you come up and if you have some that you do that aren't on the list, please do share in the chat so other folks can learn and so I can learn kind of what's happening on the ground. So a phone call, right? This is where leadership matters. A phone call from the executive director or member of the board really can make a big difference. Hopefully you all look just as happy as this woman to be making these phone calls. But this is a really easy and quick way to get that first hit, that first 48-hour thank you. Pick up the phone, a 1-minute phone call. It's a pure thank you, right? Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for your gift. We just received it. We so appreciate it. It's going to have so much impact doing X, right? If you get someone really chatty, this is a great opportunity to get to know your donor a little bit more. You can ask them what inspired them to give. You can ask them if they have any questions about what your organization does. It can be a really great engagement tool, or it can be a voicemail. Either way, your donor is going to feel pretty special that someone picked up the phone to thank them for a gift they just made. And it's going to be acknowledged. It's acknowledged on both ends. A thank you letter with personalization. Now, when I'm saying thank you letter, I'm actually talking about your tax receipt letter, but I'm hoping that you're framing it as a thank you. That this letter is actually about your donor, not about your organization. It's about how much you appreciate them. It's about how much impact they have. It is about how great they are to be in your community, right? And then, for those brand new donors, for those donors who give over a certain threshold, having a little personalization is a really nice one step further. the handwritten note. This is a classic. It's a classic that gets overlooked a lot. Now, I am a handwritten note purist. I believe in them strongly. They've kind of gone out of fashion in fundraising, but not with donors. Now, I talk with donors who are in the silent generation. I talk with donors who are boomers. I talk with donors who are Gen X donors. And I have been told many times that they expect a handwritten note to come in the mail. Now, this isn't going to be that quick thank you in 48 hours, but it is a really nice touch when it's personalized. Because a personalized email will trump a rote thank you note, even if it's handwritten, any day of the week. So that personalized email could feel like really, truly like the donor is seen. And for many people, email is a preferred way of communicating. The handwritten note can stand out for sure, but that personalized email where you took the time to kind of acknowledge the donor, acknowledge something about the donor, acknowledge their gift and their amount, that personalized email can also be that really quick thank you within that 48 hours. If you can kind of whip that out, right? This isn't the automated sequence, unless you have a lot of donors, and then having a really nice automated sequence that has some personalization fields in it, but that really is about the donor can go a long way. A welcome package. Now, this is a great option for your first-time donors for that third thank you in 3 months. So it works well for certain kinds of organizations and maybe not so well for others. But if you are an organization where you have physical space or you run physical programming, a thank you welcome package can be a really great way for donors to get to know your organization better. So art centers, museums, even after school programs. If you have places where you are physically and you have some materials that go with it, that's great. If you don't, a welcome package is still a great option. If you have, great success press clippings, if you have, past impact reports that you want to send on, thinking about, kind of whatever the materials are that you gather throughout the year for your donors, can go in a welcome package. The great thing is you can prepackage them. You can have them sitting aside, assuming, you have them at your desk, and you can write a nice little note and send them out pretty easily. The impact report. Now we're going to talk about impact reporting in just a minute, but an impact report that goes out to your donors with a little handwritten note is a great way to say thank you, and here's the impact that you have. So finding ways to send those out with some personalization is really impactful for donors throughout the year. And video. Now, when I talk about video, I'm not talking about a produced video that you put a lot of time and money into. I'm talking about like this woman, she's got like the selfie iPhone, doing a 30-second thank you, Bob, for your gift. This has an opportunity to be really impactful. Got a little feedback there for a sec. So video thank yous were something that were becoming more popular even before the pandemic hit. But since the pandemic, they've become a great tool for organizations who are using them. The video, as long as it's, if we can make sure that everyone's muted, that would be great. This is a really interesting way to personalize your thank you for your donor. And if you are the type of organization that has physical space that maybe people could go into before, but maybe can't go into now, or you're running programs that donors could maybe see, but can't see now, having a video of that space, having a video of, your staff running a program that they can no longer see in person. Maybe they never had the chance to see it in person, but this gives them a chance to kind of get a glimpse of what the organization is doing kind of in real time, kind of in action. This can be super impactful. Now, there are software programs that do this for large organizations with massive donor lists. There are organizations that will automate creating these videos and sending them out, and it's pretty slick, and it works really well. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of you are purchasing any of this. I think Most organizations would go broke unless you're a university or hospital to do this, but that doesn't mean that you can't. So, taking that quick video, 30 seconds, throw it on YouTube, make it private, send them the link. Now, when I was at Tufts University, this is something that, we did a lot, and we used a software system to do this. But when I was talking with my colleague who ran this program, I was asking him about open rates. And he told me that the open rate for emails that had a video thank you note kind of in it or linked to it had a 60% open rate. Now, that's an open rate that most organizations can only dream of. So I think, that demonstrates how interested donors were in actually seeing and hearing that message. And at least 30% clicked through, which again, even that is, a click rate that most organizations could only imagine getting. So donors actually really like this. One of the interesting phenomenon that happened is that software program allowed donors to actually respond back. And so donors were actually engaging through this medium. And in fact, I worked with a client who did a video thank you, just like, in her desk, in her office, 30 seconds. Hey, Bob, just saw that your gift came through. You're new to us. We so appreciate that. And got an immediate response from sending a video thank you. So they can be really effective, and they can be used really creatively for all kinds of organizations who have things to show. And then handwritten note on other mailed materials. Now, I can't possibly imagine all of the kinds of materials you may be sending out in the mail to your donors, but writing a little handwritten note, just making sure that your donors know that they're really appreciated on anything you send out, actually serves as a really valuable thank you. All right, did I miss any that you guys are using? All right, type them in the chat if I did. I'd love to hear about it. So this is a thank you that I love sharing. This is a thank you I got from the Vermont Food Bank around Valentine's Day. It was a pure thank you. It was just a postcard. So when I talk about don't just thank when a gift comes in, you want to thank throughout the year. This is a really beautiful example of it. Simple postcard, well designed, but it was all about appreciating me as a donor, right? It's about what I do. I spread the love. It told me again what my gift does. It celebrates me. It thanks me. I felt so good when I got this postcard. So this is an interesting trend that I want you all to kind of make note of, even if you can't do it today. There is a growing trend of sending thank yous like this a couple weeks before a direct mail piece hits. And it is showing that the return from those direct mail pieces is increasing substantially because you have just thanked your donors and you've just made them feel really appreciated, and they are much more open to hearing that solicitation. So 2 weeks later, after I got this postcard, I got this solicitation I was expecting. Did I give to them? I absolutely will. I give all at the end of the year. So I'm not a great person to say that, yes, I turned around and gave, but it's really impacted me so much that I'm showing you all how great I think this is. Now, the Vermont Food Bank uses a professional shop to do their direct mail and to do things like this. And I'm guessing that most of you don't have that ability, and that's fine. Like, this actually wasn't that challenging to put together, like something like this, right? Lower cost because it's just a postcard, but like all I had to do is glance at it. They bolded the things they really wanted me to see, like they celebrate me. I felt really good. So as you're thinking about thank yous kind of throughout the year, there are a lot of interesting, things being done and things being tested, including this, which is turning out really well, to keep an eye on kind of the creative ways that organizations are doing these kinds of things. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sharing your impact. Now, this is where I find that so many nonprofits really fall down on, right? We are in the work day to day. We know what we're doing. And sometimes it's easy to forget that our donors don't, right? They're not in it every day, but donors are investing in your impact. So you need to show them that they got what they're looking for before you ask them again. So I want you to type in the chat if you do impact reporting back to your donors. Yes, if you do, no, if you don't. Just, an informal survey. Yep. Okay, folks are saying yes. Great. Right, and a newsletter can be really powerful. All right, Amy says no, not yet. Annual report. Yep, through newsletter, prayer updates. Okay. So let me first start by saying that an impact report isn't a report, right? When I say an impact report, I'm not actually talking about an annual report, although you can make your annual report focus on impact and make it much more impactful for your donors who read it. But it's something that you want to be doing regularly throughout the year, right? It's not a once a year type thing that you want to do, because what if your donor misses that once a year? Or what if you've asked them for another gift before they got their impact report and they don't know what impact they had yet, right? We want our donors to feel really great about being appreciated and about being impactful with our organization. So regular impact reports, and I say to all stakeholders, we'll talk about that in just a second. So when I talk about reporting back on impact, I'm talking about bite-sized stories, right? I'm talking about something that has some data in it, not too much, right? This isn't a report. It's not a white paper. You just want to pull out, a couple statistics that really drive home how impactful you and your organization are. Keeping in mind that data is subjective. So you want to take a step back and think, is that data really telling the story? Or do I know that data tells the story because I know how hard it was to get to that number? And then you want to make it visual, right? So if the all-powerful mystical they say that you've got about 7 seconds of someone's attention, right? That's our attention span these days. Assume that your donors are going to glance at everything that you send them. You've got about 7 seconds for them to look at something and say, okay, I get the gist, and then toss it. You want to make sure that what you're sending is visual enough so that the visual tells the story, so that when they're looking at the text kind of pops out. There's nothing worse for me personally than opening something from an organization and getting a wall of text. I'm immediately exhausted and I immediately put it down. I'm never going to get around to reading that wall of text. But you show me something graphically, all I need to do is get the gist of your impact for me to feel that you are impactful. And when I say that these should go out regularly, many would say, and I happen to agree, that sending these out 4 times a year is really good practice. Now, that said, when I was an executive director, we got 3 out a year. 3 was kind of the max capacity we had for putting it out. And that had really important impact, right? 2 is good, 1, not enough. So you want to make sure that you're sending these impact reporting back statements, kind of whatever they look like for you, you want to be sending them out more regularly. And then you want to think about how to get this in front of your audience. So for me, back in the day, we mailed everything out because that's how we communicated with most of our base. Sure, some people were on email, we had, a standard, but ultimately pretty low open rate of our email list. We, did stuff on social media too, but most of the people we really wanted to get this in front of, we communicated by mail. So we developed ours to go out in the mail. But that doesn't mean that yours needs to. If a lot of your people are on social media, if your people are elsewhere, then you need to be designing these for your audience where they are, because your only goal is to get this in front of as many of your stakeholders as possible. So here's the thing about, these impact reports. The impact reports, yes, they're for your donors and they're really important for your donors, right? We've seen all the reasons why people will stop giving to you is because they don't know the impact they're having with you. And people will stay with you because they feel really impactful with you, but they aren't just for your donors. So when you start creating impact reports and you start doing this throughout the year, what you're really doing is creating a culture of impact for your organization, right? Everyone wants to feel that they're impactful with your organization. Your staff, your board, your volunteers, your funders, your clients, your stakeholders, whomever they are. everyone wants to feel really good about being part of this organization and this community. So your donors might not even be your primary audience, even though we know they need to receive this information about the impact that we're having. So you should be using these impact reports as a really holistic engagement tool to build that culture of impact. Now, it was my experience that as soon as we started, once we started doing impact reports regularly and thinking about them, we always knew that one was coming up because we were always in the process of planning one. It meant that every program that we launched or that we started or that we shifted, the first thing that I started thinking about was, at the end of this program, what do I want to be able to say to my donors, to my board, to whomever? And it helped me think through, okay, so what metrics do I want to be gathering now to make sure I have them for that story? And even that process of just constantly thinking, okay, like what is the impact I'm going to be reporting back on, just made me feel like everything we did was really impactful, which I think is really, really powerful for a nonprofit organization where burnout is high, where you can get in the weeds of the day-to-day, you can forget what the impact is. So this process has a lot of benefits that I think are really powerful. So I'm going to walk through a few impact reports. Now, in full disclosure, I was executive director for NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples that we put out many moons ago. So thank you for your patience, because they look pretty dated today. But I'm also going to show you one that I received this year as a donor and why I'm showing it to you. So you can have a sense of kind of the strategy where we were thinking of. Now, all of these that I'm showing you went out in the mail. But again, yours doesn't have to, and it doesn't have to look like this, but just for a little bit of context. Okay, so way back in the day, NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts, we're a political advocacy nonprofit. We ask elected officials to do things. And sometimes the things that elected officials don't necessarily feel safe doing. But once upon a time, Elizabeth Warren took a very strong, very nationally visible stance on women's health and got a lot of blowback for it. So we as an organization, it was part of our mission to help her feel that she was safe in her district, that her constituents loved her. So we did programming to make sure that she knew that her constituents had her back, so she felt safe making these stances. So at the end of that, because this is all in the background, most of our donors had no idea we were doing this. We put out an impact report that said, okay, this is exactly what we're here for. And this is an instance where we did it. So it's visual. There are a lot of pictures. There's some, blocks of text, which tell a little bit of story. There's a little bit of data in there if you look really closely. Now, this was like a front and back pager, right? And again, it went out in the mail. But our donors weren't our primary target for this particular impact report. This was actually targeted at other elected officials so that they understood when we went to them and asked them to take stances that maybe they weren't very comfortable being very public about, that we had their back. Look at what we did for Elizabeth Warren. See, we have your back. We will help. Ultimately, what they care about is being reelected. So we will help make sure that you get reelected. And that was a really important message to be showing to our donors who give to us, because this is what we do, and to our elected officials who are a primary stakeholder of our organization, that when we ask you to do things, we're going to support you to do them. Now, this is another one from NARAL, which is about our campus work. Now, there are a couple reasons why we did kind of this particular program for an impact report. I mean, one, it was a significant program that we ran, and we were proud of it, and it was meaningful. If you look really closely, there are a bunch of statistics about kind of what these students achieved, during elections, which were very impressive. But also, we put this together because I heard from a lot of our older donors that, young women today, they didn't know what was at stake. They'd never, lived in a time where they didn't have access to healthcare. They just didn't know how lucky they had it. They didn't know their privilege. They weren't stepping up to carry the torch. And these older donors were very worried, kind of moving forward. So this was our way of saying, to our supporters that no, actually, this generation is stepping up. They do know, although not personally, but they understand and they care. They're doing a lot of work. You don't have to worry about them. And they're doing it with us. So if this is something you really care about, we're engaging them. We're getting them active. We're the place for this kind of work to go. The last example that I'm going to give you, this is from Doctors Without Borders. So I'm going to say first off that this is not a philanthropic priority of mine. This is my husband's philanthropic priority. So every year we get to Doctors Without Borders, and obviously I'm good with that. Who can argue with providing medical care in war-torn areas? It's just not where my heart lies. But this is the second impact report I've gotten from them this year. Again, it came in the mail because that's how they communicate with me. We're a direct mail donor for them. But then they sent me this graphic. Now, I didn't read the first impact report I got from them. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of an open, full page open, backside. It was a lot of text. But when I got this one, this really made me stop. So I saw this, I thought, holy cow, this is what my money is funding. This is the kind of impact that I have with this organization. This is a game changer for war-torn areas. Look at, everything they can do with this kind of equipment that I'm helping provide. Like, this is amazing, right? At the end of this year, when we do our giving, Doctors Without Borders will have me fully on board with, giving to them and probably increasing our giving, because this was a super visually impactful way. Now, I looked at this impact report probably 3 times before I even glanced at the text. And I'm not gonna lie, the text isn't that compelling to me, but the visual was enough. And actually on the back side of this page, they show a picture of an operating room and they label every medical professional in that operating room, just to give a sense of the kind of resources that go into their work, which I liked too, but it was really this graphic that set them apart for me. Now, I don't get a lot of impact reporting from organizations that I give to. And in fact, it's a pretty rare thing. Generally, the larger organizations I give to will send me something, but the smaller ones don't. I often don't actually know what the impact is that organization have. I continue to give because I know people there. I know that they do good work. I have it on faith that they do, but that doesn't mean that every donor does. So thinking about what your version of this kind of quick throughout the year reporting, thinking about what that is for your organization, how you can tell a visual story, how I can glance at it in 7 seconds and feel like, wow, that's really impressive. This will actually transform some of your donor relationships, which I know because once we implemented these kinds of report backs, not only did we have a higher retention rate, but people started giving more. They did feel really impactful. They did feel like we were doing exactly what they wanted us to be doing. And in fact, they wanted us to do more of it. So people really did increase their giving. So I argue that if you really show your donors this kind of love, give them what they need to feel appreciated, give them what they need to feel really impactful with you, that it will transform your financials and your revenue, because these are the people who already care about you. Going out and chasing new donors takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. This actually takes less effort than bringing in a new donor. So if you haven't built really good systems for keeping your donors, there's a part of me that really wonders why go out and get new ones if you don't think that you're going to have a really good shot at keeping them. So the last thing I'm going to say about these impact reports is that I would call donors up, our major donors, and I would say, hey, did you see that report that we sent out about, doing this great thing? And every single time I asked that, the donor would say no. And that was okay, because they were never going to remember the content of what I sent them. What I wanted them to take away was an emotion of feeling impactful. Right? They weren't going to remember what we did for Elizabeth Warren. They were never going to remember, details of what our campus program achieved. But they were going to walk away feeling like, yeah, this organization's on it. This organization is doing what they said. This organization is achieving its mission. this organization is really doing great work. And that's all we needed it to do. So with that, I am going to share my last slide. This is where to find me. I'm also going to put it in the chat. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A, because I know I saw some questions come through, and I'm going to stop the share. And those of you who want to be off camera and come see me can come join. All right, Dennis, I think we have some questions in there.
Yes, and as we get to them, Megan, just letting people know, I'm right now sending through the chat the various ways to contact Nonprofit Net.
Okay, so I have put in the chat ways that you can find me. Although my link to joining my monthly Zoom is not coming through in the chat, but let me see if I can pull that up. But you can find it on my website. And I would love to see you there. It's a free monthly Zoom gathering. It's very intimate, and we talk about fundraising issues. Generally, we have a topic each month. And there we go. To join my Zoom gathering. All right, Dennis, you're muted.
I thought I'd hit that. Okay, here we go. Nancy asked, what are some best practices for thanking, sustaining, or monthly donors?
That's a great question. I would say when that first gift comes in, you do want to do that, if they're a new donor, a new sustainer, you do want to be thanking them kind of really quickly. But I think if you're thanking them consistently, it's a good question as to whether you want to send a tax receipt after each gift or a tax receipt at the end of the year. And I would probably argue you probably should send it after each individual gift. Just make sure that that thank you letter is about the donor, and make sure that that donor does feel really appreciated and gets kind of a whole bunch of other thank yous throughout the year. You don't necessarily have to time it in the same way because they're giving regularly, but if they're getting thanks kind of regularly, then they feel really good about being the sustainer, which means that they automated it and they're not thinking about it at all. So they're much more likely to forget that they even give to you if they're a sustainer. So make sure that they feel thanked.
Okay, and I only tracked two throughout the whole thing, and another one comes from Amy, who asks, how do you feel about swag?
So there's some interesting psychology around swag, kind of for and against. So if the swag is something that the donor isn't expecting, so for example, if the swag is not, does not have a direct correlation to a giving level, then it is going to be a really lovely surprise of reciprocity for your donor. Your donor is going to feel pretty good about that, that you thought about them, that you thought to give them that. But if it is tied to a giving level, then you'll actually see an increase in giving, or I'm sorry, a decrease in giving over time. And you're kind of training your donors to expect to receive something back, which is not the way you want to be training your donors, because you really want your donors to be giving to you because of the great impact they have with you. So you want your impact to really be the star of kind of what your organization does, rather than a kind of aligned kind of gift. So the psychology is really interesting around that, but also kind of pretty clear about that, gift for something is much more transactional and much less about giving to your organization. But you want to be building that really strong relationship with your organization and your impact with your donors.
Okay, Megan, and we do have an additional question from Eva. What is the best way to handle corporate matches?
That is a great question. I don't do corporate giving. I have to be honest. I have a very specific niche of working with individuals, but I can't imagine it's really that different. Is there anyone else on the call who might like to take a crack at that? Somebody else who has more experience with corporate giving than I do?
Yeah.
All right. Ava, I might do some digging. see if I can't come up with a better answer for you. I know it's out there.
Oh, there's a clarification. It's tied to individuals getting their workplace to match their gift. So it's corporate matching gifts.
Oh, I see, as opposed to a business giving a sponsorship. So you definitely want to be thanking the individuals because it's driven through, the giving is driven through the individuals. So you want to treat those individuals if you get information on them. Ava, are you saying that you're not getting information about the individuals? There are many times when donors give to you and they are unintentionally anonymous. Is that what you're suggesting? And feel free to unmute yourself, Ava.
Sometimes the corporate matches come in like 2 months, 3 months, 6 months afterwards. You never know when they come in. And sometimes they don't tell you who they're tied to. Like sometimes it could be a lump of people and you don't know where they're coming from. Other than that, they were employees of a certain place.
Yes. So this is one of many instances where donors can be unintentionally anonymous, which hurts our hearts as organizations, because we really do want to be thanking people, but there are times where we aren't given that information. So whenever you have the information, kind of the rules that I've laid out apply. But if you don't get that information, the best you can do is ask where the money came from if you can get a delineated list of donors. So this happens with securities. It happens with kind of IRA rollovers. It can happen with cryptocurrency donations. Anytime a gift is coming in from a third party, it doesn't mean that you get the donor information, but the donor doesn't necessarily know that. So unfortunately, these kinds of things can set up donors for having a really disappointing experience with your organization if they don't know that their gift has come in anonymously. There's not a lot you can do about that except asking the source where you got the money if they can give you a list of donors.
Right. All right. Well, thanks to everyone, particularly the folks who brought us questions, and mostly thanks to you, Megan. You've given us so much information and yet so clearly that it's very usable and actionable, not an easy task. So thank you once again. And then speaking to everyone who's attending, your feedback on today's program is very important to us and to Megan. We've sent you some links for the survey through the chat. Please use them. And also use the one for supporting Nonprofit Net, because your support helps us keep our programs available to everybody without charge. And we're suggesting or asking that you consider perhaps a $10 to $20 gift of support. Next month, we have a fascinating topic for you: becoming a high-performance nonprofit organization. And our speaker, Steve Stanton, is an authority on that subject with decades of experience. So that's Tuesday, October 12th, also from 1 to 2 p.m. We'll see you then, and thank you all once again for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.